Well, welcome. Thank you for coming. My name is Alina Jacobs, Director of Elementary Education, and I am so thrilled to welcome Lauren Muriello back to Caldwell-West Caldwell to present to our families. Lauren Muriello is a licensed psychotherapist and the founder of Wellbeing Therapy Center, with locations in Montville and Short Hills, New Jersey. Lauren and her staff provide individual, family, and group therapy and have helped thousands of children, teens, and families make important changes to improve the quality of their quality of life. Lauren's specialty has always been children and teen issues, including parenting and family dynamics, modern trends in mental health, and the impact of tech and social media on the developing mind. Lauren received her bachelor's degree from Cornell University and her master's degree from Montclair State University, where she earned the Dean's Leadership Award. As a mother, therapist, business owner, and educational presenter, Lauren combines her experience and her studies to formulate programs so that our communities can gain important information and practical strategies through presentations like this one tonight. So welcome and thank you, Lauren.
Thank you so much. Great to be here. All right, good evening, everyone. So I want you to imagine that your 24-year-old is going into a job interview. And you're walking in right behind with a folder and say, hi, before we begin, I just want to highlight some strengths that Jordan has, right? And so, we laugh, but what we're seeing is that colleges and employers are describing something similar. So many well-intended parents, instead of preparing kids for the bumpy path ahead, have been really trying to smooth the path instead, right? On top of that, we have screen culture and social media that have really degraded our kids' abilities to develop healthy relationships and have impacted their ability to focus and their mental health. And so what we're seeing is a generation of teens and young adults that are struggling, that have the highest levels of anxiety and depression, that don't go out on dates, that are less likely to get their driver's licenses, and who have the highest rates of suicide. And so as a licensed therapist and a concerned mom for these past 15 to 20 years, I've been seeing these trends, and what I've really dedicated myself to is trying to understand how we can best parent Gen Z and Gen Alpha, which are our youngins, or Gen Alpha, right? So that we can be the most effective parents we can be. And I hope that you will leave here tonight with a better understanding of what it means to effectively parent, and hopefully to also recognize that maybe we could even work a little less, because we all need to be able to take a little step back. Love this quote from Brene Brown, who says, who you are and how you engage with the world are actually much bigger predictors of how your children are going to do. It's not so much about, are you parenting the right way, but are we the adults that we want our children to grow up to be? So, it's nice to take a self-reflective moment here, because our kids will really imitate us in all sorts of ways, right? So we are those models. So we need to walk the walk, right? Not just talk the talk. So we have to really think about that in our daily habits, in how we take care of ourselves and our bodies and our minds, and how we balance our screen use with non-screen use, and how we balance hard work and play, right? So we really want to think about the values that we have, and are we a model of that for our kids? Just quickly, I'll highlight my very unscientific conclusion from reading all the scientific information is, like, we can just think of it as this: like, about half of the kids are doing okay, and the other half are not doing so okay. It's really 52% of the current teenagers are the ones that are reporting persistent feelings of sadness. So it's a little more than 50%, right? So some kids are okay, and that's why, some parents might say, like, oh, they're fine, and maybe those kids are fine. But we see a lot of kids struggling, right? We see a lot of kids with higher rates of anxiety, depression, school refusal, trouble sleeping, irritability, behavior issues, loneliness, et cetera, et cetera. And so I always just like to mention to parents to be looking out for some of these signs when you might need to seek professional help, right? So persistent feelings of loneliness, change of appetite, not being interested in their fun activities as they typically are. Of course, if there's any self-injurious behavior or suicidal thoughts, you want to seek professional help. But thinking in general about our parenting and wanting to parent healthy kids, there was a group of researchers back in the early 2000s that really looked at Western industrialized democratic societies. And they found some very interesting trends, and they sort of, coined this term weird parenting, right? And what they noticed is that in our societies, the rate of parent-child conflict is extremely high, right? The rate of parents reporting behavior issues is extremely high. So there's something going on in the way that we're parenting that's not exactly working, right? And when you look at cultures that live simpler lives in communities where children are growing up working to help run the household, you see a very different dynamic in the family. You see more collaboration, cooperation, and much less parent-child arguing and conflict, right? So, it's important for us to think a little bit about why that is happening. And so you probably have heard many of these types of phrases describing parents in our culture: helicopter moms, snowplow parents, lawnmower parents, bulldozer parent. And I was interviewed about this specific topic, right? So when I gave that metaphor at the beginning, smoothing out the path in front, that's the bulldozer parent, right? We're just going to smooth the road. No bumps, you don't have to worry, And parents are well-intended. We don't want our kids to suffer. We don't want to watch them fall over bumps. We don't want there to be big hurdles. We want it to be easy, and we don't want to, see them be anxious. But what happens when we do that is they never learn how to get over the bumps. They never learn that they're capable of getting through hard times because we keep it so easy for them. Those are the kids that when they got to college, they couldn't handle life, right? And the college counseling centers have been inundated with students that are too anxious to handle their daily living there, right? They can't face the challenge. They don't know how to get through it. We certainly do not want that. Interesting trend in the past 30 to 40 years. Moms actually spend 40% more time on primary child care than they ever did. And fathers' involvement has gone up 150%. I mean, that's wonderful, right? We know to an extent that's wonderful. But it is interesting to see that it's college-educated communities where parents are more involved than they ever have. And what I see in my work in our communities is that many times the well-intended involvement spills over into over-involvement. It's too much. Tie your shoes. Pick that up. Remember, you have to go there. Did you do your homework? Put your dishes in this thing. Like a constant feedback, right? It's too much feedback. It's too much feedback. And oftentimes when I'm working with families, I will tell parents, one thing you can do right away to just improve the dynamics and decrease conflict is to stop saying so much, right? Because when we give so much feedback, it can be overwhelming, especially, for certain children, right, who can be overstimulated by so much direction and information. Instead, we want our kids to look around and realize that their room is a mess. And maybe actually, if they put some things away, they could find their favorite pair of socks, right? We have to give them an opportunity to come to some of those conclusions themselves. So that's really important that we're thinking about it. And the way I like to think about it is this. A parent is like a gardener. We're going to plant seeds. We're going to show up to add some water. We're going to make sure we weed, let the sunlight come in. And then we're going to stand back and we're going to watch what kind of beautiful plant grows, right? And then we intervene when we need to, weed a little, right? But if we're carpenter parents, that means every single nail and screw has to be in the exact right place, that if there's not a perfect right angle, when this attaches here, then it's going to fall apart. And we're thinking too much about every single joint and every single turn and every single nick in the wall, right? And so if you can take on more of a gardening approach to parenting, you're going to remember to create space and to step back and to let our kids actually develop into the unique individuals that they each are. Because when we are carpenters, or when we are bulldozers, or when we are weird parents, we're actually trying to get our kids to fit into some mold or to be on some path that we think is the right path for them. But we don't know exactly the right path for our kids. we can guide them in a direction, and then encourage them to express themselves. So I'm going to show you a clip here. It is the social psychologist Jonathan Haidt speaking. How many of you have heard of The Anxious Generation? This is his book that came out a couple years ago. Thankfully, it's made a huge splash in our country and in the world. And in this clip, he is talking specifically about this concept of overparenting. So I'm just going to go over there and tap play.
American parenting really changed in the 1990s. When I'm talking about the book, I go around the country, I ask audiences, at what age were you let out? At what age could you go outside and play with your friends with no adult supervising? And I say, only people over 40. What's your answer? Call it out. And it's 5, 7, 8, 6, 5, 7. It's always 5 to 8. That's what we always did. Between 5 and 8, kids could go outside without an adult. They'd get in arguments, they would play games, they would make rules. They were independent. They got years and years of practicing independence. Then I say, just people under 25. What year were you let out? 12, 14, 13, 16. Nobody says 10 or younger. In the 1990s, as the crime rate was plummeting, as American life was getting safer and safer, Americans freaked out and thought that if they take their eyes off their children, the children will be abducted. Now, this goes back, the fear was stoked by cable TV in the 1980s. There were a few high-profile abductions. But it's not until the 1990s that we really start locking kids up and saying, you cannot be outside until you're 14 or 15. We took this essential period of childhood from about 8 to 12, when kids throughout history have practiced independence, have gotten into adventures, have made rafts and floated down the Mississippi River. We took that period and said, you don't get to practice independence until it's too late, until that period is over. Now, a couple years before you go to college, now you can go outside. Oh, okay, go off to college. And a lot of them are not ready. They're just not used to being independent. When they get to college, they need more help. They're asking adults for more help. Protect me from this. Punish him for saying that. Protect me from that book. There's a very sharp change with kids who were born in 1995 and afterwards, surprisingly sharp. Jean Twenge, in her book iGen, analyzes surveys of behavior of time use. And beginning with kids born in 1995, they spend a lot less time going out with friends. They don't get a driver's license as often. They don't drink as much. They don't go out on dates. They don't work for money as much. What are they?
And so when I read Jonathan Haidt's original book, The Coddling of the American Mind, it really started to change the way I was looking at parenting, and I thought back to my own childhood. I was born in 1975. I was outside all the time with the kids on the block, right? And hopefully some of you were too. And thinking about, how our communities have changed so dramatically. And I started looking for any opportunity I could to get my kids outside independently, right? And so I'll give you a little example. So right now, my son is 17, he's a senior, and my daughter's in 6th grade, she's 12. But when she was around 9, I was starting to really think about this very specifically, and how can I give her more opportunities for independence? And I had to go pick my son up at the library. So I said to her, do you want to come, pick up your brother at the library and we can get some books? And she was like, no, not really. And I said, wait, I have an idea. What if we drive close to the library? I'm going to stop the block before. You get out. You walk the rest of the way to the library. I'm going to give you the library card. You go in, pick out books, check them out. I'll meet you in the parking lot. She jumped for joy, literally jumped for joy, and was like, yes, because it's so exciting for them to have an opportunity for an adventure like that, and that I trusted her to be independent. There was not a big street to cross. It was a little corner for her to cross. And it was such a huge milestone for both of us. And ever since then, I have given her as many opportunities as I can. I'm one of the parents that really searched out other parents who would let their kids ride their bikes alone in the neighborhood the past few years, and so she does that. And so we really need to be talking to other parents about how we can give these safe opportunities for our kids. Our communities in general are so safe. They are absolutely wonderful and so safe. And we want our kids to see neighbors as people that they can trust, that they can ask questions to. You know, I used to knock on neighbors' doors all the time. Can so and so come out to play? Or like, can we see your dog? You know, right? And it's so important that we give our kids those skills. It's those social skills that really get them through those challenging moments when they do get out into the world, whether it's college or a job. And they've already practiced those skills. So we really want to give our young kids a lot of opportunity for structured free play. Monday it's soccer, and Tuesday it's violin, and Thursday it's swim class, right? We need to make sure they have unstructured free play without an adult telling them what to do. That's where they do work on conflict resolution skills and get really creative. So I made a point to find a group of friends that wanted to have a standing play date. So it was like every Wednesday or every Friday, a group of kids, we'd rotate the houses, and we just always knew the kids were going to be outside in the yard having fun together. There was no structured activity. And I highly recommend that, doing that so that your kids get that incredible opportunity to have that unstructured free play. We want them to take healthy risks. It's very important for them to develop all sorts of confidence. And another example is letting siblings work out fights, you know? So if your kid has a sibling, one of the benefits of having a sibling is practicing fighting and practicing conflict resolution, right? If you have your own sibling, you've probably done it yourself and you can remember. So parents should not get involved when siblings are fighting unless someone's really getting hurt, you know? Unless you really have to step in because someone's about to, hurt themselves or throw a punch or push someone off the bed. But otherwise, let them work it out. Let them work it out. When parents get involved in siblings fighting, what you often see is that the sibling relationship starts to degrade because a parent is taking a side. And, one sibling feels annoyed that the other sibling is now, buddy-buddy with mom or dad and they're left out. You really want siblings to feel like it's them against the parents. That's like a really good unit to have in the house, right? Like, oh, mom's being annoying. I know. Let's go do something else, right? That's ideal. So remember that piece of it. And I always like to say, if your kids are whining and complaining and they're looking for something to do, interpret it as a request for more freedom and responsibility, right? We'll talk a little bit about that. Some other things that we are seeing in our current culture is something we call grind culture, which is the belief that constant hard work are the only paths to success, often at the expense of personal well-being, right? And so getting good grades is always at the top of the list of the pressure that kids and teens feel. We see in 2024, Common Sense Media did this great research, and they concluded almost 1/3 of teens are reporting feeling burnt out. They're burnt out in life. And they're only 15, 16, and 17 years old. That's a problem, right? And that's a result of the message that they're getting from our culture. And we can also call it toxic achievement culture, right? So there's a really great book called Never Enough. The author is Jennifer Wallace, and I'll put a list of books at the end of the program. But the idea is that our kids are increasingly absorbing the message that they have no value outside of their accomplishments. Like if you're not the president of this club, and if you didn't get straight A's and take all APs, and you score the winning goal and, make the travel team and all these things. We have to make sure that we're giving our kids a message that they matter no matter what they do, no matter what they accomplish. This is Julie Lithcott-Hames. She also has a great book I'll highlight at the end. She's the former dean of freshmen at Stanford, and she talks about where she has seen parenting go wrong, and she calls this the checklist childhood. So I'm going to play a little clip from here. make sure we're telling our kids you're enough just because you're you and you're a part of this family. It's really very important. Perfectionism, right? It can really be damaging, leading to a lot of anxiety and fear and avoiding challenges and burnout. And so healthy striving is fine. You know, we're working hard, trying to get places, but we see mistakes and failure as a part of the path. No problem at all. It's not about perfection. It's about working hard. And so we want to make sure that we reframe failure as not the opposite of success, but as a part of it. And anyone that's successful in life will tell you failure is a part of that, right? So tell them like, oh yes, that happened to me. Oh my goodness, I did that. I failed this test. I once looked at someone else's paper and got in trouble too. You know, tell them all your failings. It's very, very, very helpful. And praise their efforts, not the results. That's hugely important. So it's not, oh, great job, you got that A. It's that I'm really proud that you worked hard. Like that's the most important part, that you worked hard on that and I saw that you cared. It's the effort that helps them to grow and develop that resilience. We don't want to put more pressure on them. We want to make sure they feel like they have that intrinsic self-worth, no matter what. No matter what. And when we're thinking about this, I like to ask this question, you know, what is the biggest predictor of lifelong happiness? Because that's all we want for our kids. We want them to be happy, right? We want them to grow up to be happy, healthy adults that lead happy lives. So what is the biggest predictor of lifelong happiness? You know, is it grades? Is it the prestige of the college you went to? Is it the amount of money that you'll have in the bank as an adult? No, it's none of those things. It's healthy relationships. Healthy relationships is what make people happy. And so there's a wonderful longitudinal study, the longest longitudinal study ever done out of Harvard University. And researchers look at all sorts of data sets related to these subjects. But one that I love is this piece of the study here. And what it found is that it's quality relationships and close connections that are the greatest predictors of happidness and health. And so it wasn't the cholesterol levels at 40 years old that resulted in a healthier 80-year-old. It was, did they have relationships that they trusted? Did they have people in their lives to lean on when the times got tough, right? And so when we're thinking about that, and we think about raising our kids in elementary, middle school, and high school, what we want to be thinking about is having a great bond with them and making sure that they have some good friends and all these other things. They'll do just fine. Yeah, you know, work hard and we'll get through these things, but it is so much more important that they are feeling connected, feeling a part of a community, feeling a part of your family. So much more important than if they get straight A's, for example, right? One that everyone focuses on a lot. And so we want to make sure that we're developing a really strong bond and making sure that we prioritize time together, that we have more fun and less conflict, that even for our older teenagers, that we're taking time to touch them, to put our hand on their arm or their back. You know, the little ones, it's easy to cuddle, right? But you know, even with my teenage boy, you know, I'm always kind of adjusting, like my hand on his back works, you know. Or the other day, I gave him a kiss on the cheek. He's like, "Ma, you got to give me notice for the kiss on the cheek." I'm like, "Okay, sorry," you know. So, all right, you know. So can I just hug you now? Yes. All right. Next time, I'm like, "Can I just give you a kiss right here?" Okay. You know. So I take the feedback. But being affectionate is really, really important with adolescents as well. And remember, they are living in a culture right now, a social media culture, where these influencers are everywhere, right? So we want to make sure that we are influential in their life because we want them to be influenced by us and our family values. And the only way to do that is to be present in their lives and to have that good bond with them. That's how they'll listen, care, and respect you, you know? And so one of the ways to do this is to make sure that we're creating time to talk to our kids, especially as they're getting older, middle schoolers and high schoolers. They're going to need to process some feelings with you sometimes, not all the time. They might not be ready right after that friend drama thing explodes, right after it happens. They might not want to tell you about it. But maybe later, the next day, or over the weekend, when it's settled a little bit, then they'll want to talk. And really the key is that you find the time to talk when it's the best time for your child, not necessarily just for you, right? You have to notice when they open up. So, so for my middle schooler, oftentimes she comes home or I come home, and there's like a transition period, right? There's some snacking, there's some food, there's some dealing with things. Maybe there's getting in a bath or a shower, and then at some point before bed, for her, is often a time where she's ready to talk. Hey, Mom. Or sometimes she'll ask me, when she's blow drying her hair or brushing her teeth, will you come in the bathroom? Sure. And then all of a sudden she's like, can I tell you something? Right? And there it comes out, so-and-so did this and I was upset. So I learned her pattern. So, there are times where I was about to maybe like sit down and have a little dessert or cup of tea myself, and all of a sudden she calls me and I'm just like, man, I am tired, but I know this is the time to go talk to her. Right? And then for my son, his time, unfortunately, is like 10:30 or 11 p.m. at night. Like that's just what he loves to do. So sometimes my husband and I will be getting into bed and he like knocks on the door and comes in, and I'm just like, okay, here we go, And that's his time, and that's when he shares. And so we've noticed, what works for our kids, and we make ourselves available, and we give them our undivided attention, and that means we put our phones down and flip them over or put them away or put them in the closet, and make sure our kids know that they're a priority. And when my kids walk in the room and I'm looking at my phone, I immediately put it down, because there is nothing more important, unless there's an emergency, which is very rare. There's nothing more important than giving them my attention when they come in the room, if they want to say something, or even if they don't want to say anything. I just want to let them know that I'm there, and if they did want to connect, here we are. So important. Our technology can be incredibly helpful. It could also be harmful, right? So we have to be aware, really aware. And so the other thing I always like to point out to parents is this simple concept of hot versus cold brain. A hot brain is a very emotional, dysregulated brain. It's when your kids are freaking out and having fits and, and yelling at you and emotional and screaming or crying. The cold brain is when it's calm. It's a little more logical. They can hear. They'll listen to feedback. We really want to make sure. Let me just go back here. We really want to make sure that any important discussions we're trying to have with our kids is happening when they have a cold brain. If they have a hot brain, nothing will get through at all. And as a matter of fact, if they have a hot brain and you try to put something in, it will just explode. You've all probably experienced that, right? So you got to be patient. When they calm down, whether it's in 10 minutes, 2 hours, or the next day, you'll address it again. Now, the key is that you do address it, right? So if there's something major that has happened, either a rule was broken, a behavior was inappropriate, or maybe there's an issue that happened in their lives, we're going to wait, but we're not going to forget about it. So that's really important, right? And I will often say to my kids when they have hot brains, I'm going to walk away right now, but we will address this later. Just letting you know, right? It's a good reminder for me to say it out loud, right? And when they do have that cold brain and we want to listen to them, I really remind parents to just listen. Don't interrupt, leave a lot of silence, try to stay calm even if they're saying things that are concerning. And then we want to offer support. We don't always need to solve the problem right away, okay? A lot of parents jump right to the solution. Let me solve it. Should I call the teacher? What are you going to do, right? Maybe you should do this. Do you want to do that? And a lot of times they don't want a solution right away. They just want to be heard, right? And that's important in all relationships. So let's just take a little break here, maybe a little comic relief along the way. Hello. When you say, how is school? They hear, describe all the tedious things you did today, right? When you say, how much homework do you have? They hear, homework's the most important thing in your life, right? This is how they're interpreting it. When you say, did you talk to your math teacher like you said you would? They hear, I don't think you're capable of doing what you're going to do. So instead of how was your day or how was school, try, were you able to see the teacher's slides better today? I know that was frustrating you yesterday, right? So ask about what matters to them. Really notice that. What did they mention? What matters to them? And then bring that up. They're going to know that you're listening to them and that you care and respect what they're saying. Instead of, well, you need to tell the teacher you can't see, try, oh, that's kind of annoying. Do you want to just vent, or do you want an idea here about what to do? Because sometimes they don't want your opinion and they just want to vent, right? So always ask before you give your advice. Instead of, you would never do something risky like that, right? Try, you seem really worried about something, and I want you to know that you can talk to me about it. I'm here. I'm here for you, right? Really important. So always offer love and support unconditionally, you know. My son's about to go to, he has his prom. We're talking about college, and I just said to him the other day, I'm just reminding you that no matter what, if you're in trouble, you can call us. We will not be angry. We're here to help. We might be angry later, but we're always there to help, right? Make sure they know that. Unconditional love and support. And a part of this is to be able to express empathy. I want to play a short clip for you. It's a little bit animated. It's Brene Brown's voice, and she's talking about empathy. And I just want you to listen to what she says at the very end. I think it's a very important line that we can all keep, and I'll repeat it for you afterwards.
So what is empathy?
It's the connection, right? And so I love that line. I don't even know what to say right now, but I'm so glad you told me, right? And this can be in a parent-child relationship, in adult relationships, anyone. It's a really, really good line. We don't always have to know what to say or how we're going to solve this problem, but I'm here for you, and I heard that this is hard, and I'm going to stick with you. And so it's really important that we try to develop this empathy skill. And it might sound like, wow, that just sounds really hard, or that's tough. I can help you figure it out. We'll get through this together, right? Those are really important statements and can have absolutely more impact than a solution. Really important. So the other piece that parents often say to me, that they feel frustrated with themselves about, is that they flip out, right? They criticize, they blame, they yell, they get upset, they lose it. They just lose control, because we have hot brains too, right? So we react blindly instead of responding wisely. I mean, we do our best, but we can't always do it either. And so it's really important for us as parents to know how to calm down. And not only is it great because it helps us in that moment, but what else does it do? It models for our kids how you do handle tough emotions and how you calm down. And so for me, these are some of the ways that I have discovered are very helpful. Walking away is a huge one. If I get into something with my kids, and of course it happens at times, I catch myself, this is going nowhere, I'm going to walk away right now. I'm leaving. We'll talk about this later. Or sometimes I'll tag team my husband, like, can you deal with this? Like, I need to walk away right now, right? I'm too exhausted. I'm getting too agitated. It's really important to be able to have that self-awareness and recognize it.
Connected.
Oops.
Connected.
Stop talking is a great one, right? Sometimes we're just talking, yelling. Just stop talking, walk away. I like to look outside, look for some trees, some clouds, putting cold water on your hands, wrists, face, taking a deep breath. All these things are great ways to calm your mind. Listening to great music, going for a walk, exercise, moving your body, all these things. But allowing your kids to see that you're taking a moment to calm your brain is a really great thing to model, really important. And so we can work on that for ourselves. The good news is that a rupture, which is a poorly handled conflict, creates an opportunity for a repair, like a sincere apology, a vulnerable moment, and that all leads to lifelong bonding. So I have said to my kids often, I'm really sorry that I just yelled before. I was tired, stressed. We were talking about the same thing over and over, and I just, I lost it. But I love you, and I want to talk about it more if you want to. The beautiful thing that has happened for me now, after doing this for many years, my son, who is 17, a few weeks ago, he was frustrated, very stressed about college decisions, and his 12-year-old sister, said something to push his buttons, and he told her off, yelled at her so harshly, and then stormed upstairs. And I said to her, he's just very stressed. But about 10 minutes later, he came down and I heard him apologize to her. Sorry, I was just stressed. You did nothing wrong. And I thought, oh, isn't that amazing, right? That our kids learn and they take it on. They learn from our actions. So it's okay when we yell and lose it, because then we have the opportunity to repair it. Allowing your kids to see you be vulnerable is a very important human quality for them to see. And so in addition to all of these interesting aspects of raising our kids in this day and age, of course, screens and social media plays a tremendous role. I have been speaking and lecturing on this topic for many years specifically. We see major issues with social media negatively impacting our youth's mental health, specifically teen girls. But these charts are from Jean Twange's books. One of the very obvious trends that we see, which is very easy to understand and believe, is that as teens spend more time on social media, they spend less time with their friends in person. And when you spend less time with friends in person, you feel more depressed. And you don't have to be a social psychologist to get that, right? If teens are alone in their room online, they're not feeling great in person with friends, developing real friendships. And so one of the reasons why we're seeing that increase in depression and anxiety. Teens are spending an average of 7 to 9 hours a day on devices and social media. That is a tremendous opportunity cost, because what are they not doing instead? Well, they're not sleeping, they're not seeing their friends, they're not focusing on schoolwork, and we see many of them experiencing an addiction to the products, whether it's video games or social media. And so while we thought that giving teens these devices would help them to feel more connected, what we are actually seeing is the opposite, right? Kids are lonely, distracted, anxious, and depressed. And so one of the messages that all parents must give kids of this generation is that, look, technology can be really great and amazing, and it's here to stay, but we have to control it. Otherwise, it will control us. And so we have to create family guidelines and stick to them. Make sure that all devices are out of the bedroom at night is a really important one. Most Wi-Fi systems these days allow parents to set schedules on devices. So for example, my daughter, who's 12, the laptop that she uses, the Wi-Fi goes off at 7:30 on that device. So if she happens to be watching shows or she was doing something, boom, it's just done, right? Now it's time to take a shower, hang out, read, do whatever else we're going to do. And the same thing with iPads and phones. Parents must control those devices. Otherwise, kids will be trained to use them around the clock. They'll interfere with sleep, etc. And so one of the ways we can do that is by setting the limits through the Wi-Fi, like I just explained, or on the devices themselves. So iPads, phones, Androids, they all have these parent controls now, thankfully, because years ago they did not. And you can set time limits and app limits. You set a password that only you know. If you're not sure how to do this, you can Google it or go to your local Apple dealer or Verizon and tell them, I need help setting this up. It is a very important step. It will be well worth the investment of time that you make to set up the parent controls on devices. This is an example of what my son's phone looked like last year. He had 30 minutes on YouTube, 30 minutes on sports, 30 minutes on Chrome, and 30 minutes on Instagram, for example, right? We don't use TikTok in my house. I feel like it's one of the worst culprits. But that adds up to 2 hours. And what the research has showed is that beyond the 2-hour mark, that's where we see a much higher risk for mental health, suicidal thoughts, etc. And so we want to really keep them on devices under 2 hours a day outside of schoolwork, because then they have time to do all the other important things that they need to do to keep them healthy and happy, seeing friends, getting out in the world, etc., etc. And so if your kids already have smartphones and devices, the key is to decrease the use and create some limits, as I just described. Keep it 2 hours max on screens, and increase face-to-face time with friends. If your kids are young and don't have smartphones yet, that's great. Don't give them a smartphone until at least middle school. And when they get the smartphone, it does not have to do everything in the world, and it definitely doesn't have to have access to social media yet. So make it a phone. Make it have text and FaceTime and phone and maybe some music, but it does not have to have an internet browser. It does not have to have social media. Delay social media as long as you possibly can, which usually means at least 1 or 2 other friends are doing the same. So if you can find another parent of your kids' friends and say, I really want to keep them off social media as long as possible, what are you thinking? If you can keep them all the way to 8th grade or 9th grade, better yet, they're going to be much better off for it. And so that's really the recommendation these days right now. So we want to make sure that we're out in the real world with our kids, right? Whatever is important to your family, whether it's community service or enjoying nature, visiting family, taking the dog for a walk, make sure you're doing things as a family out in the world so that they're interacting with other people in the community so we can refocus on our communities. So in conclusion, I want to make sure everyone knows that our kids are really resilient, and research shows actually that they can literally change the architecture of their developing brain and make it healthier, right? So all of us at some point in our parenting are like, whoa, I need to change what I'm doing there. This is not working. No problem. Don't feel bad. Every parent is learning as they go. Every kid is unique, right? But when you make that realization, know that your kid's brain can literally change and will. So that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. We also want to be a very positive force in our home. It's more important than ever that we set the tone in the household and stay optimistic. Expressing extreme doom or fear will really negatively affect your children. I've had some parents that tell me, well, I want to be honest with my kids about what's going on in the world. I don't want to shelter them and lie to them. And I'm like, you don't have to lie. But you do want to shelter them, actually. They don't need to be exposed to news, right, and to media. They should be living in the world of their age. So if they're 8, they should be living in an 8-year-old's world or a 12-year-old's world or a 15-year-old's world, right? That is not a 30, 40, 50-year-old's world. Very different, right? Our brains are fully developed. We have wisdom. We have more supports. You know, we have the ability to impact. We do want to protect our kids from media and news and doom, right? So turn off the news and limit media in your home and provide very positive, optimistic messages. You know, we'll get through this. This will pass. And I got this. You be a kid, right? So there are times where my daughter has brought up current events and asked me questions about it. And I'll talk to her about it in an age-appropriate way. But then I'll say to her, but don't worry. Be a kid. Let the adults worry about that. And I think it's a very helpful message for kids to hear that we got it and they can still play and be kids. When in doubt, give love and support, you know. I love you, and we'll get through this together. That's such an important phrase. These are some of the books that I have highlighted tonight, and I highly recommend. They're on the resources list. There's a QR code at the end that I'm going to show you, and you'll see these are all on the resources list. Highly recommend these books. Listen to the audiobooks. Listen to some podcasts where the authors are being interviewed. If you can't, get through a whole book. I know a lot of people have trouble getting through a whole book these days, right? But I highly recommend them. And here is, I'll leave this up for a little bit. So the resources is the QR code in the middle. Sign up for my newsletter to stay in touch. And I have some parenting videos as well. My staff and I have been working in the community for 15 years at Wellbeing Therapy Center. And so I'm always available for parent consultations related to screens and social media or all mental health. And I encourage you to reach out and stay in touch. We send a monthly newsletter with great tips. I just wrote an article about AI in mental health, which is the next big topic for us to be thinking about as parents. But I want to thank you so much, and I'm happy to take a couple of questions, either open forum or privately as well. So thank you.